Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, good everything. My name is Jason Weiss. I am the host of the Ask Jason Weiss show. But before we get started, you know I have my normal disclaimers. Although I am an attorney and my guest today is an attorney, you have not hired either one of us for any specific legal matter or any matter at all. Nothing discussed today is legal advice. This is educational, entertaining, and fun. Nothing here is legal advice. If you need legal or financial advice, consult an attorney directly so that he or she can help you. No attorney-client privilege is created by you watching this show or listening to the banter that we are going to have. So I need to be on my toes today because I have a former big law attorney who practiced in both New York and Chicago, and then went in-house, which is the dream for people like me. And then she decided that maybe just a little bit something was missing, and she went ahead and decided to do something a little bit unique. And we're going to talk about that. But I want to introduce Deborah, who works with small to mid-cap companies that make, sell, distribute, market, advertise lots of different products. She has extensive experience with regard to trademark, licensing, monetization, brands, patents, all the things that we hear about this all the time. She's worked with employees, governance, operational, financial, and all of the stuff that you need to be a powerhouse attorney and in-house counsel. And today she is thankfully here, and we're going to be talking about a little bit about Bootcamp for new lawyers, which even seasoned attorneys can hear a little bit because she's got a very unique path to where she's gotten to. So again, Deborah, without any further ado, welcome to the show. Thank you so much. And let's just jump right into it. You know, you started practicing law when you started. We're good. And you started in-house, New York and you started at big law, New York, Chicago type firms. And then you got the golden ticket to go in-house. So what was it like, first of all, going from private to in-house? What was that like?
Wow. So first off, Jason, thank you so much for having me here. And hello to everybody who is listening. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. So I started out at big firms in Chicago and New York. And like many young lawyers, I was a good writer, had come out of Princeton and Northwestern Law. I had good writing skills. So everyone decided I should be a litigator. And that's very common for young lawyers and people coming out of law school. Litigation is what they see. It's the drama. It's the court cases. It seems very attractive. And so I went right in, and I actually was a litigator in various big firms, including a Cravath spinoff for about 5 years. And Jason, here's the interesting part. I realized that actually litigation was not a good fit for me because from a personality perspective, I love good outcomes. I like happy people. I like people who like to pay their bills. I like to see business move forward. And I'm a very positive outcome person. And I found that litigation, a lot of times just the drain of it, going for the jugular, always being in a fight, always having a conflict, the cost, a lot of what clients fretted about, it was their worst nightmare. And I realized that I really was a much better fit as a corporate lawyer. So after being an IP litigator for almost 5 years, I actually switched within my law firm to the corporate side, started doing licensing, started going out and trying to find my own clients in an industry that I was interested in, which was fashion. I was living in New York City. And within a year of making that switch, I went in-house at 9 West Group, which was a in-house, big, huge footwear distributor with 1,000 stores across country. So for me, it was actually a 2-step process. It was figuring out, how I could align my skills with something, what I call now tapping into who you want to be as a lawyer, your talent, your aptitude, your passion, what you're good at, what you love doing, what's more suited to your personality. And once I realized that, I found the transition to be, pretty easy actually, to go from fighting about things to building things.
So there are so many things there to unpack,
But it was a long introduction.
well, no, not really, because I mean, it's just the unpacking, right? For you to be a litigator for 5 years and then to be able to stay within your law firm and transfer departments, like I'm not going to say that's unheard of, but that is not very common. I hear it all the time from attorneys that I work with and attorneys that I mentor, that I don't like the litigation, common theme. I want to become a transactional attorney. Okay. Well, how are you going to do that? You can't just flip a switch and say, boom, I'm a transactional attorney, right? You've got to start basically over, or you need to land a client or two and say, hey, these are new clients that I have. I want to handle the transactional stuff. Can so-and-so senior partner oversee it and assist me, because I really want to start doing it. You just going down the hall to the head of transactions and say to her, hey, I really want to go ahead and switch. She's not going to say, okay, great. No, you are hired as a litigator. We brought you in as a litigator. So you broke every mold with that, right? You got to transition. And then I guess you said after a year, you got the golden ticket, which was to go in-house. And for all of us that are either fractional, part-time in-house or whatever else, which we'll get to that with you, you got that dream job. You opened that Wonka bar and you had that golden ticket.
I mean, I think part of it is just knowing what you want and having a strategy to get it. For me, within my law firm, I had worked on a litigation matter that, in law firms, there's clients that are many times are corporate clients that then have litigation needs. So there's many different partners that are involved with any given matter. So for me, once I started realizing this, I was really focused on the business and how to help the client kind of, get through the litigation without disrupting the business. And the corporate lawyer who I was working with, noticed that. And I was, asking questions about, well, how do we do this with the least disruption? How do we do this? How do we do this? Whose jobs are involved was one thing. And then, Jason, you show how astute you are. The other thing I did is go out and get, a couple smaller clients in the fashion and licensing industry, which I started going to a few trade shows, doing research. And one of the clients I brought in ended up doing a deal and one of them didn't. But by bringing them in and showing I had the capacity, at least trying, that was the other way that I was able to get them to agree. Yeah. Start me as a 6th year associate in the litigation group.
Exactly. And look, that's what it's all about, right?
And I want my nice office and I don't want a pay cut.
there you go. I mean, so, and that's it, right? Because you hear all the time, sure, you want to go from litigation to transactional. I'm going to take you from the 5 or 6 year tier. I'm going to bump you down to maybe the 2-year tier. Are you willing to give up your office? Are you willing to give up the title? Are you willing to give up the track you're on? Are you willing to give up money? And most people say no. And that's how the big law firms, get you. No knock to big law firms. They're out there. They can squish us like bugs if they want to. But again, there's also plenty of room in the market for solos or for alternative types of arrangements. Now, one of the things that you touched on, and for the younger lawyers that are out there, or even seasoned attorneys, you said it, right? You went out and you tried bringing in 2 clients, but I'm guessing you went out and threw a wide net and you didn't only look for 2 clients, right? You probably looked for, I'm just going to guess, 20 clients. The 10% rule is you got 2 and then you landed half of that, which is if we were playing basketball or playing baseball, your batting average would be very low. But don't get discouraged, because in the law practice and the business practice, having a 10% success rate in grabbing new clients, that's above the norm.
Yeah. And I think part of it also is not being scared to ask. I think a lot of lawyers, and, no matter who we are, we tend to want to have the answers ourselves. We're people that have always been looked at as the answer people, and we don't like to go out and ask for help. But building a practice, whether you call it help, whether you call it, rainmaking or whatever you want to call it, you still have to go out. You have to meet people and you have to ask. You have to say, hey, this is what I do. This is, who I am. And, do you know anybody, or would anyone in your organization or anything that you're doing, is there anything I could help you with? And there's some freebies involved. You can't do too much if you're working for a firm, because you belong to them. But to the extent that people want to pick your brain or hear your ideas, or a lot of time there is a little bit of you want to basically give twice before you ask once, sort of the golden rule of networking there. So it's all and a little bit of luck. It's all those things put together. So
I always found the biggest stumbling block to be, you and I are like-minded, right? If a client calls me up and asks me a question, or I'm trying to get a new client, or I'll look at the document. But if it's something outside of my comfort zone, I don't want to give advice on that, obviously, because that's a mistake. But you got to find somebody else at the firm, the organization, or somewhere else that's like-minded with you. Hey, Steve, can you look at this document, just paragraph 17, where it talks about intellectual property and licensing, and just let me know if there's any red flags. And a lot of times when I was in the big firms, Steve would say, sure, absolutely, and would do it and say, hey, I didn't find a matter number, or I didn't find a client number, or where do I bill this? And it's like, well, I'm trying to land this client. Now, sometimes a Steve would say, okay, well, if we get retained, please let me know, because I'd like to bill for the time, which I'm cool for that. And sometimes I would get I don't work for free. I got to get paid for this somehow. So you got to bill the client. And that's where I had a rub with the big the big firms. And that's when I decided to, basically venture out on my own and find like-minded individuals where I could say, hey, I'm trying to land this client. Can you help me out? And if the client retains me, I can pay you, or I'll owe you one, or I'll take you for a beer, or I'll have you on my podcast, or whatever it is. And when you find those like-minded people, my one suggestion is don't let go. Don't strangle them so that they never want to deal with you, but show the appreciation, show the love, show the thanks. Even if the client didn't retain you and that, the person that helped you out is an avid wine drinker, get him or her a bottle of wine as a little, hey, thanks. It didn't work out with the client, but I appreciate you. That goes huge. Do you have any other tips that you could recommend?
I mean, I think, yes, everything that you say is true. I mean, everybody's time is their inventory, and you have to look at it that way, with professionals, because, you want to make sure that you value everybody's time. But I think, the other thing to do when you're I agree that you have to, I think for people listening, like, well, that's really great. If I had anybody to buy a bottle of wine for, I'd go out and, buy them a case of wine.
Right.
But I think that's also something that lawyers need to think of, when they're choosing what they want to go into, right? So if you're going to go into bankruptcy, if you're going to go into litigation, if you're going to go into something where, it involves big, complicated, very expensive matters, it's going to be harder to develop those clients than it is if you choose something that's maybe a little bit more a niche practice. And this, again, developing a niche practice doesn't mean that you have to know everything about that practice. It means you have to be interested in clients that are within that industry and show your interest that way. The last client I got personally was one in the music industry, not because, I know some things, contracts, I do have some knowledge on different kinds of contracts, but it's mostly because I'm in a networking group where I talk to people who are involved with the music industry. So again, I think it's sort of a broad way of showcasing all the aspects of who you are and not feeling limited. Like, I'm a lawyer, I'm going to network with people that need legal services. I think you have to throw a wider net and, be willing to take a lot of L's.
Yep. Yeah. You have to, and you have to have thick skin, and you have to be able to, know what you know and know what you don't know. Hey, I don't know that. Let me get back to you. That is an acceptable answer. It's also an acceptable answer to say, you know what? When do you need that answer by? And you could let them know. They're going to, we know every client needs the answer yesterday, but then we can realistically say, you know what, let me research it and I'll get back to you by Friday. Or you can set those deadlines. And look, it's called the practice of law, meaning you got to practice it, right? You learn from what works, you learn from what doesn't work. The only thing that I would advise is if you try the same thing multiple times and it's not working, try something different, right? Don't keep making the same argument over and over and over and over. Tweak it, try it up, wear a different shirt, wear a different hat, practice in front of the mirror, try with a different client, have somebody else do it. I mean, there are so many ways to just try it. But, you know, the only mistake you'll make is either A, giving up, or B, doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the exact same result, right? There's in litigation, right? You could file the same motion in front of 4 judges, lose in front of 3 and win in front of the 4th. So that means that it's got some validity, right? If you go 0 for 4 in front of all 4 judges, you might want to change it up a little bit because judges do talk. And that's the other thing, right? Judges talk, clients talk, attorneys talk. And what you want is you want to do your best for your client so that your client can be your walking billboard. I mean, that's the best way.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. One thing that you said, Jason, I just wanted to, because it was on my list. So I just wanted to bring it up. I had it written down as KWYDNK because that's how, you know, people talk in code these days. But what it stands for is know what you do not know. And the reason I say that is because that is the number one thing I think when you're in-house that you really need to get a handle on your sphere of expertise. Because when you're at a firm, yes, you can walk down the hall and talk to this person or that person, and you're likely to get some sort of answer. When you're either a solo practitioner or you're in-house, you have to know, wow, would my client be best served by me trying to figure this out? Or by me going out and just saying, you know what, I'm not the right person to talk to about the implications of building, you know, a factory in, you know, Bolivia. I need to go and talk to someone else. And I do think that those things are, you know, there's such an important line between not being shy, saying, hey, you know what, I have the expertise, the knowledge, and the brains to figure this out and give advice on this problem. And or saying, you know what, this problem goes beyond what my ken is, and I really need to go outside and get expertise. And I think if you start to really understand that boundary, you save yourself a world of pain down the road by either missing opportunities that, hey, you know, he ended up getting a guy that I'm better than that guy. Why did I give it up? Why did I say I couldn't do it? Or, wow, I did not serve my client well by putting a clause in there about taxes that was not consistent with, you know, this tiny tax break they were looking for or whatever it is. So I do think it's important to, you know what you don't know.
And I think part of the other important part is, you know, you look at, you know, people are very protective over their clients, over their book of business. They don't want to send it, you know, like if I were to send you just a general piece of litigation and because I didn't do litigation and you worked the litigation and then the client picked up the phone and said, hey, Deborah, you did such a great job on my piece of litigation. Can you now look over these agreements for me? Well, that's what I do. I look at agreements. I don't want to. So you have to have a little bit of trust and camaraderie with the attorneys you work for. I'm not saying be overly protective. I'm also not saying just go ahead and do it. So me personally, what I'll do is I like to find, like you said, niche practitioners. Meaning if you are a licensing, branding, intellectual property, all of that, I'm going to send my client to you for that. But I know that if they want to form a new business venture, right, the client's going to come back to me. And I do that, right? I just landed a new client and we're talking and he called me up and he said to me, hey, outside of the litigation, I got to make sure that my documents for my corporation are correct. And I said, well, you know what? You got referred to me by so-and-so. Does she do that? And the answer was no, she is straight up family law and criminal law. Those are the only 2 areas she does. And I said, great. And I even emailed her afterwards saying, hey, I just want to let you know blah, 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 asked me to work on this. I want to make sure that's outside. And the email I got back was, oh my God, that's so refreshing. Most people would have just taken the client and run. Thank you for asking. Go for it. I don't do that area. So again, that's huge. So here's what I think we're going to do, Deborah. We're going to take a quick 20-second break so that we can hear all about the new streaming network and Bold and all of that. And then when we get back, of course, I'll put my disclaimer out there, but I want to jump into what you're doing now with as an alternative legal provider. And that's a phrase I admittedly stole from you, an alternative legal provider. And we're going to we're going to talk about that. So listeners, stay on the edge of your seat. We'll be back in 20 seconds and I'll give my disclaimer and we're going to talk about alternative legal providers. Welcome back. I am your host, Jason Weiss, on the Ask Jason Weiss Show. Quick disclaimer here. Although we are attorneys, nothing discussed today constitutes legal advice. This is for educational, entertainment, and viewing purposes only. We are not your attorneys. You have no attorney-client privilege with us, and nothing that we say here is legal advice. You want to hire one of us, you can go ahead and do that. Deborah's information will scroll across the bottom of the screen so that you can contact her directly. You can find her on LinkedIn. Her it's Deborah, DEBORAH S, then a second S, TEHR. So you can find her there. And you could always ask me, and I will provide the contact information for her. So. And as attorneys, we roll with the punches. That's my dog barking in the background, so I apologize to that, all the viewers for that. So we're talking a little bit, and right before we went into the break, we were talking about alternative legal providers. So we got to the stage in Deborah's career where she was a litigator, went in-house, obviously left in-house, and she is now doing her own thing as an alternative legal provider. So tell us a little bit about what that means in plain English.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Jason. By the way, I told my dog that he has to keep quiet, so he listened.
Well, I'm actually watching a second dog today, so but admittedly that was my dog. So.
Anyway, so, while I was in-house for many years, I went from 9 West, then I was general counsel of Candies, which was a footwear brand with a lot of licensing and branding, which eventually was acquired and turned into Iconics Brand Group, which ended up owning 30 brands. So, it was a very, very demanding job. I was there for almost 10 years. And, we were a public company. It was very busy, a lot of activity, a lot of, it was a very, very busy career. And what I realized as I was getting toward the end of my in-house period was that I needed, while I was in-house, somebody who had my experience, who could help me, because I was I was a lawyer and a paralegal. I did not have another lawyer in my department, and asking my outside firm for help with purely business contracts or little questions or things that I just didn't have the time to do, like amendments to 40 different contracts for 40 different brands. And I realized that I wished I had somebody that wasn't from a big firm, wasn't billing me at big firm rates, but someone who had sat in a seat like mine before, who understood what it was like to be on the business side of the law and be effective in that role. So when I left in-house in 2010, that is the opportunity that I worked on creating. And that is what I've been doing ever since then, which is providing, top-notch, seasoned business and corporate legal services to in-house counsel or to smaller companies that can't afford a full-time or don't need a full-time in-house counsel, but offering them that fractional support, which is really, helps them. They can reach out to me. Most of my clients, we have a very close relationship. They text me, they call me, they email me, some of them Slack me. And the idea is that I'm like an in-house lawyer. And some of my clients, I actually have an email in there, have their email attached to myself. But I'm actually not an employee. I'm an external retained lawyer, but trying to do the best I can to be like I'm inside. And that has been what my practice has been like for the past, 12 years or so.
Yeah. So when I have a similar model, and when one of my clients brought me on that fractional role, the first thing I did was say, hey, I want to sit in the weekly team meetings. And I got pushback from the client, not pushback so much as we don't want to pay you to sit in our meetings because they're paying me by the week, so it doesn't matter, but more like, wait, we've had attorneys in the past, internal and external, they never sat in our meetings. And I said, you know what? You're not paying me to sit in on the meetings. I'm going to sit in anyway. And let me tell you, within the first 3 meetings of sitting in, I developed a trust and a rapport with the business. So now it was more than just send it to legal, make sure we're covered. Now it was, hey, Jason, how are you? What's going on with your son and your daughter? And, we're getting ready to talk about this venture, and we're going to do all of this, and we'd love your input. Now, all of a sudden, I was considered a team member, right? Not a team member to make the decision. Should we go forward and buy this business? No, but a team member. Hey, we're going forward. We want to buy this business. Should we be looking out for things? What kind of red flags? What should we be asking? How should we be preparing so that when the LOI, the letter of intent, or the deal points came across my desk, I already knew what the business wanted. I didn't have to first say, is this a good sale price? Is this the location you want? Is this closing good? Because I was already there. Oh, we're buying the business, $1 million. We're going to close April 2nd, and, and we're going to allow them to stay in the space. Like, I was there.
Yeah.
Everybody time and effort and money. So the point behind me babbling on and on about this is that ask those questions of the client, of the business unit. Is this what you want? And also put up a little bit of resistance when it's, hey, here's the agreement, mark it up. Well, what am I marking up? Is the sale price okay? Are the payment terms okay? Is the delivery date okay? So either let's get on a call or send me the bullet points or send me the LOI. And I think we adapt to how the business runs, but we're also kind of training the business on how to make it more efficient so we can run at the same speed as the business. And that's the biggest complaint I hear from GCs about outside counsel. I'm constantly waiting on them. We, as fractionals, can go ahead and keep up with the business.
And I think you really bring up a great point, Jason, which is, coming as a brand girl, you have to build your own brand as to what you offer. You almost have to market yourself, and, to use maybe, I think I made this up, but probably somebody else did, and I just heard it somewhere. So caveat, but I like to say to my clients, don't see me as the speed bumps to slow you down and create hurdles. See me as the guardrails that let you go faster, more safely, with fewer risks. And so, once they stop seeing me as someone who's going to put the brakes on thing and see me as someone with some good ideas, like, hey, why are we fighting about that? Like, you guys don't really care that much about that, but you care a lot about something else. So let's figure out how to get everything that we need, a protection over here. And then let's talk about whether we can, get this other point as well. And I think, again, like everything else in what we do, it's a balance. But I do think that, and particularly when it comes to, lawyers and clients, it's almost, we have to overcome that reputation of being an expensive problem and start to be looked at as a valuable solution. So It's
now,
a little bit of a twist.
do you see, and I can answer this, but I want your opinion. Do you see the use and the mainstream of AI helping or hurting that thought?
Wow. Well, I actually see AI. AI is infiltrating the legal profession in every single aspect. My clients use it. I use it. It has its pros. It has its cons. Nothing I say is going to change the fact that AI is changing the landscape of everything we do on this planet, including the legal profession. However,
and every day too. Things are changing every day.
Every day. But what is interesting is the more I think that AI is making the playing field more level. So before, if you wanted to research something, when I went to law school, I have to admit I had to look it up in a book and look at a key and do this. And there wasn't even any internet, no Google, forget AI. We had to think it up and do it ourselves. So if you had 50 young associates that could spend all night and all weekend researching someone and come up with a brief, that brief was probably going to be better than the low-key guy that is one person that's spending all night in the library by himself. AI really changes that. Okay. But what it also does is it makes a lot of noise down here. And I think it's going to be more and more important that valuable legal advice then has to step above the fray. So it's that expertise. What is it in this legal draft? A pretty good license. Hey, I plopped it in AI ChatGPT. It's a pretty good trademark license. In fact, I think I drafted that. And that was on someone's SEC disclosure. And that's where they got it from. But to be able to take that and then say, yeah, but in this clause, this could happen. And if that happens, that's bad. Let's change that language. That is where the value is going to be.
And it's also the person standing there at the end where it's, hey, we just got sued. And this is your license agreement. You'll be like, yeah, because they're completely wrong, because it says A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And they're suing because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're golden on A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, look, I literally was going back and forth with a client recently. I drafted an agreement. The agreement was good. I needed some points. I asked them for some points. They gave me some. They said, we need to tone it down a little bit here. It's a little too aggressive. No problem. I can do that. And then they send me an analysis of my contract from ChatGPT. And not just ChatGPT, OpenAI. So that's problem number one, right? You put a confidential agreement in OpenAI where anybody can go ahead and find it. That's no bad. At least put it in the paid version so it's kind of blocked off. But then, and I'm reading the comments because I'm real intrigued. And at this point, I'm like, fuming because I worked so hard on it. And I look at the comments and I'm like, well, all of these comments are making it so that there's going to be no pushback from the other side. So you're telling me I should just go in with my bottom line and say,
with my most diluted version and hope for the best. Yeah.
No, I'm going to go in strong. Maybe not, crushing strong, but I'm going to go in strong. These are what I want. Because me and the client, we've already talked about. Look, we're saying 1 through 7. We'll negotiate on 3, 4, and 5, but we're not going to negotiate on the other ones. So I'm going to put all 7 out there. And then believe it or not, they came back and only wanted to negotiate 1 point. So I got 5 extra points in there that they didn't even think about because they didn't use their version from AI. But I feel that as attorneys and practitioners, we're not being second guessed, but we're being challenged. And I'm okay with the challenge. I'm okay with the questions. I'm okay with all of that. But at the end of the day, if you want to go with ChatGPT over me, then don't hire me.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I love it when my clients send me something like, oh, we need an agreement. And we asked ChatGPT and this is what it spit out. And it's like, oh, that's a great start.
Well,
but
you just hit the nail on the head, right? Because if all clients were to say, hey, this is the agreement that I want and it's through ChatGPT, can you
make it work? Yeah.
That's awesome because that answers
exactly.
all of your questions. You know the price, you know the terms, you know the location of the property of the project. That's awesome. That's better than, hey, give me the bullet points for the deal. That's awesome. Then you'll go back and you'll say, okay, this was good, but I needed to change your indemnity. I needed to change that it's non-royalties. I needed to change that it's worldwide. I needed to, and that's what we're there for. So like I've been saying, I look at myself, even though I don't resemble him, as Batman, right? Batman's got that awesome belt, the awesome Batmobile, the motorcycle, the helicopter, all of that. Batman is a superhero, but he's even better when he has all of his toys. So we are the Batman and Bat ladies of the world, and we have cool toys that we know how to use. So let us use the toys and let us protect you. That's how I look at it.
I really, and to be completely frank, I see the differentiation between where you and I started, where there was no internet, and then where we are now. I see the bigger differentiator in that difference between not having a World Wide Web and having it, as opposed to having Google and AI. Yep. At least at this juncture, they don't. The difference isn't quite as remarkable, but again, I see it as a leveler, and how to use those tools correctly is really going to be where the rubber hits the road in the future.
And to all the attorneys that are listening, or the wannabe attorneys, or the soon-to-be attorneys, or I will never be an attorneys, but all of that, just make sure you check your rules, because I can tell you now, here in Florida, there are at least 2 courts that if you're using AI, not for, hey, I need a different word, or using it as a thesaurus or all of that, but if you're using AI to write your stuff, you need to put that in there so that you can avoid the sanctions and the hallucinating AI machines. So be very careful, follow your local rules, follow the terms and conditions, and pay attention to what the court and the judges are saying.
Just one second. I just have to add a story I saw today. It'll just take 1 second. In the paper today, I saw that a judge had asked someone who was being sentenced to write a letter of contrition to, I guess it was to the parole board. I don't remember all the facts, but basically when they saw the letter and they plugged in the same thing, it was an AI letter, and they denied it. So if you don't care enough if you're not contrite enough and sorry enough to write your own letter, no parole for you. So that's an extreme example, but yeah, people know when AI generates things.
Look, when you get the thing with the line in the middle separating each thing, or the font is a certain font, I mean, there are certain things that you could look at and you're like, that's AI. So I'm in the process of writing a children's book, and I wrote it. I used AI to tweak a couple of things here and there for like words. I didn't want to use the same word over and over and over. So I used it like a thesaurus. And then I ran it through an AI checker, and it said that it was 75% me. And I'm like, wait, this is like 97% me. I needed, 3 different words, and I didn't like the flow. So I'm like, I don't like these 3 sentences. Can you help me change it up? I don't want to use the same word over and over and over again. And it's like, great. And here it is. So take it with a grain of salt when you're running things through judges and clerks and all of that. So give us a little bit of leeway, because those checkers aren't the best. So I can't believe we're almost at 40 minutes. This has been incredible. So I have 2 questions for you. The first question is not as tough as the second question. The first question is going to be, for anybody that's getting out of law school today, if you had one piece of advice for him or her, what would it be?
Figure out what your talent, aptitude, and passion is. Find something you're interested in, even if it's not the basis for your career. If it's art, if it's music, if it's sports, find something that's interesting for you. Do research on it, write something about it, start a minor blog, network within there, and then see if there's a way to help that formulate something around your legal career that really excites you, and that you bring something to the table that nobody else does.
And I'm just going to piggyback that and say, and go out and try to generate your own business, because as attorneys, we're only as good as our book of business. We can all write briefs. We can all do this. There are different skill levels, but going out and getting your own clients gives you the freedom that you deserve. Last question. I don't know enough to answer if you're a reader or if you're a TV watcher, but whichever one you prefer, either what book are you reading or what are you currently streaming? And that's the hardest question of the day.
Okay. Well, do you want me to, I guess this whole talk has been around integrity. So I guess I have to be truthful here. I am both a reader. I'm a member of a couple different book clubs, and I am also an avid streamer and watcher. I just started watching an older series on Netflix, admittedly, Outlander, which is like kind of a, fantasy romance. I watched that without any other members of my family around. And I actually just finished reading a book by Maggie O'Farrell called The Marriage Portrait, which was really a beautiful book about, it's a historical fiction going back to the 1400s and brings in a lot of, palace intrigue and a lot of facts. And it's a very beautiful book. So
awesome. And I just watched the newest season of The Lincoln Lawyer, and it was extremely entertaining, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm not currently listening to a book. There's mine.
Okay.
But I want to thank all our viewers for watching. I want to thank the newstreamingnetwork.com. You can see Deborah's contact information on LinkedIn below. Deborah, do you want to give, for people that are just listening, do you want to give an email address that they can contact you directly?
Absolutely. If you want it, it's my full name, but without the extra S, Deborah Stehr 0203 at Gmail. Deborah Stehr. I don't use the middle S except for on LinkedIn. There was another Deborah Stehr. Deborah Stehr 0203 at Gmail. I would love for you to connect with me, and I'd love to talk to anyone, particularly young lawyers out there that are looking for your path. It would be a great pleasure to meet you and see if there's anything I can do that might give you some new perspective. It would be my pleasure and honor.
Thank you, Deborah, for being on the show. Awesome show. Thank you so much. Can't wait to have you on the show again in the future. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will be in touch soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. And thank you to the Streaming Network. Really appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.